7 countries is the North Africa, the Maghreb region, if you would like. Region 2, comprising of 13 countries, is West Africa. Region 3, which is Central Africa, with 15 countries. And Region 4, with 11 countries, is East Africa. And Region 5, with 10 member countries, is Southern Africa. So our mandate is to ensure that sport is coordinated, and we work through the sports ministries, sports commissions, and confederations of sport. And we are the only region that has a program to develop regional confederations, and it's actually a constitutional mandate. You are not going to see a COSAFA in any other region. You are not going to see a COSAHA, Confederation of Southern Africa Handball, hockey associations rather. You are not going to see as yet in Region 1, Region 2, Region 4. But we have made it our point to ensure that we organize sport at regional level and create harmony and synergy. And we also work very closely with the Olympic movement. And as a region, we do have an existing memorandum of understanding between ourselves, Region 5, and the Confederation of Southern African National Olympic Committees, COSANOC. And this is a way of ensuring that we work very closely with the Olympic movement. And I'm glad to say, even at the outset, that we are having a forum scheduled for the 15th and 16th of November in Lesotho, which is bringing in all the presidents of National Olympic Committees, all the secretaries general, all the confederations in our region, all the ministers of sport in this region, and the directorates of sport in the ministries and sports commissions, and other members of the academia, athletes, in one room. And we are answering one question: how do we ensure that the athlete is supported fully? That's the question we're asking. So we want to talk about harmony and disharmony. We want to talk about autonomy or we want to talk about interventions and interferences and so on in one room. And God willing, we expect to get the Secretary General of FIFA. We expect to get the Director General of Olympic Solidarity from IOC. All things being equal, we expect to get SG of IAAF. We want everybody in one room and say to ourselves, does that help Africa? That we are able to say, if you take me out of office, I'm going to FIFA for this country to be suspended. And we want to say to FIFA, but is that how you tell our national federations? What is the status? And we say to IOC, in 2010, we were in Acapulco with all the ministers, and we came up with the Acapulco resolution that says there has to be harmony. So are we talking responsible autonomy and it brings disharmony? So that's what we want to talk about, very frankly, under the room. But that's just me talking at the moment. Before I give you the overview of this region, I want to tell you a story. So somebody falls very sick and is admitted in hospital. And the relatives realize that the man is really sick and he may not make it. So they invite a pastor to go and give the last rites to this man. So when the pastor went, and I'm not being religious here, I'm sorry if I'm going to annoy other people from a religious point of view. It's not intended. I would like you to get the gist of what I'm talking about. My apologies. So when the pastor gets to the man's bedside, he realizes that he is very sick. So instead of just giving him the prayer, he decides to share a word of hope first, so that his soul may eventually rest in peace. So he starts sharing a message. And as he's speaking, the man starts showing some discomfort. But the pastor is getting closer to the gist of his message. So the man indicates very quickly that he wants a paper and pen to write. So the pastor gives him a pen and paper. But because he's ready now to get to prayer, and his message is really reaching the point that he wanted, the man scribbles something very quickly and gives it to the pastor. So the pastor is about to pray, so he puts it in his pocket and begins to pray. By the time the pastor finishes praying, the man is dead. And he's the same pastor who is asked to come and officiate at the funeral. And he says, I was with the dear departed, the man who lies here, and may his soul rest in peace. I had the privilege of being at his deathbed, and I gave him the last prayer. In fact, he wrote me a letter and that's the same jacket he was putting on. He shoves his hand in his jacket and takes out the paper. And here is what is written on the paper. Pastor, you are stepping on my oxygen tube. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about sports administrators in this region who sound so busy, who sound so passionate, who sound so committed, who pretend to be working, but they are stepping on the athlete's oxygen tube. So I would like to challenge Namibia. As I speak here, I know I'm going to be persona non grata after I leave this podium. But that's a fact. I work with 10 countries, and I'm giving you the state of sport in this region. I was tempted to speak from the heart, but I said, no, Stan, sometimes you become emotional. Put it in writing so that you focus. So I'm going to stick to what I've put up here. And I have a little bit of PowerPoint that the guys are going to show there. This region has got 177 million people. And if you look at its youthful bulge, it tells you that the majority of this population is a young people. And it's clear that the majority of these young people are in the streets because they are not employed or are in schools. So, what are the administrators doing as they drive sport in this region? Sport the world over, colleagues, has remained the leading dynamic industry, and there's no doubt about it. There's statistics to it, which I'm not going to bore you about. Just for your interest, it says that today, sport has risen now to about 720 billion, but between 2000 and 2011, sport was between 450 to 620 billion dollars worth, if you look at the global value of sport. And the sports industry is growing faster than the national GDP rate around this world. The sports value chain has significantly grown, and it has very significant growth prospects as well, if you look at all that the experts have been talking to us since yesterday. And what drives this value chain? 4 very critical elements. Number one is the sports properties. And I'm happy my colleague is going to be talking about it later on. And there is a panel discussion to discuss that. Sports properties include your leagues, your teams, your athletes, and other intangibles that you may want. Number 2, which is the pillar that drives the value chain, is monetization of the media and marketing rights. You saw it yesterday that statistics is showing that sponsorship on its own is not significant in terms of bringing money into sport. Manchester United, if you look at their revenue base and the model, 82% of their revenues come from media and broadcasting. The English Premier League just signed a deal 2 years ago, $8 billion in the next 5 years. Whether Crystal Palace or Brighton, Hove and Albion plays in an empty stadium or not, they will still get millions because of media and broadcasting rights. So we can be fretting out there and saying, but the stadium is empty, but there's nobody, because that is a trickle. They don't use turnstiles as revenue. If you look at the turnstiles for Manchester, even though week in, week out, Arsenal, Manchester and Man City, they'll have 80,000, 90,000 in the stadium. That's a trickle. But our sports teams, our sports leagues are more focused, and they even invest more, even in adverts and activations to try and bring people from the communities to come and fill the stadium, where they pay $1 and come in there. And they pay $2 for security and other overruns when these people are bringing $1 per person, per capita. Is there marketing sense in there? Because they are paying $1, you are paying $2 to the security, the hiring of the facility, to everything else. But you want to see the stadium very full and you're running into debt. Hello? So that's the second pillar in the value chain. There is the experience. The experience. And sometimes as Africa, and I'm included in this, we are so content with mediocrity. We tick the box and say, but we did it. But we hosted the event. But it was there. The games happened. The event ran. We're content with that. We forget. I went into a conference where Premier League teams had a workshop, and I was invited Like I've just seen another invitation, Victoria Falls, they'll be having a football fiesta there. They want me to go and speak. I asked them, what business are you in? And I'm asking football directors and Premier League team chairpersons and CEOs, what business are you in? This one says we're in football business. This one says we're in sports business. This one says that and that. And I said, that's a problem. Because if you don't know what business you are in, then you don't know how to manage that business. Guys, we are in the entertainment business. People come for an experience. That's why they come to the stadium. That's why they follow a sport. They want to be entertained. Nobody's worried about what is the size of the what do you call it? The markings on the pitch. Nobody's worried about your dugout. When they come and they follow a sport, they're worried about the experience. They want to see the goals. I mean, you saw how people, even at the stadium yesterday, when Minister Otoni was taking a penalty, and I had the whole stadium in euphoria. That's the experience that people want to see. But if they come for that experience and they don't get it, and then we wonder why they don't follow even our social media, even our icons. Somebody was talking about us making use of our athletes here. How many people are following your Facebook page as an institution? How many people are following you on Twitter? Even your website, how many hits have you had? Experience in the value chain. And then the fourth element in the value chain is packaging content for broadcasters. My friend Muiwa knows I'm very passionate about this issue of broadcasting. I don't see my colleague here, but one of them is here. We have our own fights in this area. And Africa must rise. And African broadcasters, and this message, I wish the minister was here, we need to take it even to the summit of the heads of state. We need broadcasters, national broadcasters to know that they must pay for content. Because that's our intellectual property. Some of us were content with being on TV. Did you see me on TV? We phone our relatives up on TV on the news. Watch me. I have said to people, I'm not going to put on a t-shirt branded unless I know the value out of it. I'm not a billboard. So there must be value in me putting on your t-shirt. There must be value for me. But people in sport today, you and I sitting here, we are ready to say we have been sponsored with 10,000 t-shirts. That's not sponsorship. That's ambush marketing. Because for them to rent a billboard in the city, one billboard for 13 weeks, it's going to cost them a fortune. So what do? They make human billboards, the billboard in town is mainly viewed by motorists because they drive. But they make billboards that can sit in a lounge, a billboard that can go inside in the buildings during a party, and that can be seen for nothing. But we will be clapping and say, oh, got a sponsorship of t-shirts. Africa must rise. Africa must rise. Broadcasters are queuing. Right now, they are falling over each. That's why the IOC has now an Olympic Broadcasting Services, OBS. Because they used to be getting the other broadcasting partners producing the Olympic Games for them. And realize this is big business. Now people are buying rights direct from OBS. And look at how much they're paying. Our own broadcasters, mine too. I was talking to Josephine Zulu, the production manager in Zimbabwe, and she was saying, I don't know how we really need to buy the rights. I said, but who is qualified for the Olympic Games from Zimbabwe? Our broadcasters will buy rights for the World Cup when our team is not even there. But they will not buy rights for the events where our own people are competing. And these are national broadcasters. Africa must rise, and that must change. We need, and it's there. If you look at the numbers, that's the fourth value chain pillar and the biggest producer of funding. And that is where we have to start talking as sport. Now, such is the nexus of the virtuous cycle of sport based on these four pillars of the sports value chain. I really get worried whenever I go into countries. Whenever I go into country, whether it's in Malawi, it's in Zambia, or it's in Zimbabwe, and I'm talking to my sports colleagues and I'm asking them about these things, I get very worried because people are content with mediocrity and we celebrate it. Namibia has made a bold statement by hosting this conference and this expo. It must stimulate some serious commercialization opportunities around these 4 pillars I've mentioned. It must stimulate some serious business around that. I had a meeting with the Director General of the Lesotho Broadcasting Corporation 3 weeks ago because we are hosting Region 5 games in 2020. And I said, let's have coffee, madam. Let's have coffee. Because in marketing, there is what they call vertical integration, which is what IOC did by now saying we'll have our own broadcasting services. As a region, there's coming a time, because you see our broadcasters are producing and broadcasting. So there's going to be a time when we will then say, that's fine, we're now going to produce our own content. If you want it, pay for it. Because most broadcasters say, no, production costs are they're high and so on. But then the question that we must start asking as sport is, so why am I going to then give exclusive rights to a national broadcaster who is limited by borders, or me live streaming and reaching millions in the global sector? That is the disaster that railways companies have gone into, because they invested so much in railway lines, which you cannot then transform, and forgot to realize that there is going to be some other forms of transport that will come along. Because trains in those times, city to city, Bulawayo, Harare, Francistown, Bulawayo, the way that popular. But things have changed. You and I used to burn fuel on a Sunday morning because you wanted to avoid breakfast at home and wanted to hang around with friends to go and buy a newspaper. But now we have no excuse to tell our wives to go out in the morning because you can read the newspaper on your phone. And I've said to newspaper companies, such is a risk of your business. Because I'm going to read the news while I'm home. And I compare the price I pay for it. By the way, we pay for it, right? That's data. That's why now base stations are being opened, because they're making money from our data as we read the newspapers on the phones. And the newspapers have to be creative to remain relevant. Even on the plane, you sit in the plane, they offer you see people saying, no, don't worry, because they've read the newspaper already. I'm saying sport must also look into that. And Namibia must be challenged to make use of these 4 pillars. The GDP growth in what is called the BRIC, which is your Brazil, Russia, India, China, grew more than 4% annually between 2000 and 2011. And with the most dynamic being China and India, between 8 and 12% annual GDP. And during the same period, Russia's spending on sport rose more than 53% annually. Same period. And the question I'm asking, and I'm having a conversation with my chairman, Dr. Vey here, that, wait a minute. So why should I continue buying kit from company X? Because sport in Africa is a consuming industry. We are consumers. We don't produce, we have no value addition and beneficiation. How about now us getting lines of credit and introduce a factory that begins to manufacture kit for our own programs activities? We own this industry, colleagues. We own. But third parties are coming in and they are reaping so much out of it under our noses, and we are very happy and proud to give them money. But we own this industry. Sport is our industry. But what do we own? Because we're not benefiting from it. And we are very quick to go and give them money when this is our industry. Watch this space 5 years from now. The R5 brand will be produced in a factory within this region. China grew by more than 20%, India by 17%, Brazil by 7%, and the UK drove 6% annual growth between 2000 and 2011 through this, expenditure in sport. And the UK drove 6% annual growth between 2000 and 2011, while in the USA, American football, baseball, NBA, hockey bring in more than 23 billion yearly in gate, media, and sponsorship revenues. I'm not sure of how many of our clubs and leagues and events are anywhere near that in Africa. Akli, Rajas Casablanca, you talk of all these clubs that you would know and all these other elements. I was speaking to one of the ladies from Kenya when we were in Morocco, a former athlete, a good friend of mine, and she had sponsorship from a company which I won't name. And I was saying, oh, that's very good. So you were sponsored? I said, yeah. So how much were you being sponsored? I said, yo, they'll give me the kit and every tracksuits and everything else for my racing. Cry, my beloved Africa. Really? So you race and you are the face and the icon of Africa, and you are only wearing a brand that these people. I mean, do you know the rate card? If you go to NBC and ask them the rate card for an infomercial of 13 or 15 seconds, how much it's going to cost you if it's prime time? They'll give you the prime time rate and you see how much it is. And this guy they know he's going to win. This lady is going to win, and she's on camera and she's racing. She's getting to the finish, and you look at how many seconds it is that she's going to be there. And then even the interviews and so on, it's going to be another 5 minutes or so of being on TV, prime time. And they give you a t-shirt that costs 200 rand. It is a sad reality that while the sports industry is gaining such exponential growth and growth prospects globally, the same benefits are not being enjoyed in Africa, largely through what I call man-made barriers. This is the part that's going to make me persona non grata now. Africa tends to celebrate and amortize mediocrity, sacrificing excellence by prioritizing self-aggrandizement. People want to line their pockets. That's why you're all sitting, I'm not sure here because I'm preaching to converted, but there are some people who are sitting out there who, what they think is how much goes into my pocket. How much S&T am I getting for attending this? How much money am I getting? How much allowance am I getting? It's in Africa where athletes fly economy class while administrators fly business class on the planes. It's in Africa. It's in Africa where you find 5 administrators accompanying 1 athlete to the Olympics. It's in Africa. It is only in Africa where the sports industry is content with being consumers and not producers of sports products, goods, and services. It's in Africa. It is as if we are allergic to establishing global sports equipment manufacturing industries ourselves, apparel factories, and producing sports brands that are proudly African. I would like us, and I was going to say this yesterday to even the vice president, that this expo in Namibia should be ideal sports trade fairs and platform, should be the ideal platform for your fairs, annual, and I heard somebody talking about now, that we make it an annual sports fair, for which Namibians can engage to exchange goods and services, while at the same time engaging to unpack fundamental sports business issues and finding solutions to such challenges like number 1. How do we include sport as a permanent agenda item during the Heads of State Summit in bilateral agreements and diplomatic relations in order to derive high value? And that's what Cora was talking about. It's because we don't have the data. So you have nothing to tell the Heads of State. So the Minister of Health can say, Your Excellence, if I don't get $8 billion, 300 million people in the southern region are going to die of malaria because of the rains and the strain of malaria that's there, and we need to spray. He's got the data that's there. How much is the Minister of Sport going to say? Because we don't have. But it's time the Heads of State at that high level understand the value of sport when we build a case for it and see the need for a paradigm shift. And for me in Africa, the paradigm shift is not in policies, not in regulations, not in legislation, it's in the mind. That's the first paradigm shift that you must start from. And I'm really very worried about that. Number two, how do we introduce national social service plans and pension schemes for sportsmen and sportswomen in order to ensure that they do not die paupers post their short careers? And it's not institutionalized. When I talk about national social service plans, I'm not talking about get a company that can be an insurance company for them, because you heard what Dr. Papuli was saying yesterday. But it's the life skills and the capacity for them to know that they must earn, they must keep, they must save, and they must grow their resources. And we were just discussing earlier on and with my colleagues, very notable iconic names, and I won't mention them, who have died paupers in sports everywhere. Zimbabwe, South Africa, Zambia, I'm sure Namibia as well, Malawi. And we are sitting here, stepping on the oxygen tubes, waiting for the funeral to say, he died a pauper. And we need to start thinking about that. How do we introduce minimum eligibility qualifications for sports office bearers in order to improve efficiency and good governance? Now, I said the value of sport has now reached $650 billion globally. Now, I'm just trying to imagine, if you had a business that gives you net worth of $650 billion, would you put that business in the hands of somebody who's not qualified because they used to be a very good boxer? So how much qualifications do we have? What qualifications do our sports administrators hold? I'm coming to it a little bit later on. So we've got people who speak so much, so that one, in a pink shirt, that one should be the president. We've got people who run businesses around because there's got money who he can sponsor our events, so let's make him the SG. That's the criteria we're using as Africa. So Africa must start thinking about eligibility qualifications. Minimum for you to be an SG, you must hold a certain qualification. Trust me, we are determined as Region 5 to change the legislation. That's why we're bringing international federations to a forum to say, hey, that's not interference. We want quality. I have asked my good friend Bernard, he used to be the national team coach of football in Namibia, or Dr. Munyonga in Zambia, and I said to him, do you think, because coaches want to have this C license, D license from Europe coaching, and I said, do you think Brazil is going to teach you how to beat them at the World Cup in football? They will teach you enough to understand how you run your football so they can beat you 6-0. So why can't Africa design its own programs for Africa by Africa? And somebody on the podium talked about it. You take a Kenyan from here, they are where they know that they've lived all their lives, take them away and put them in Europe, where it's cold, where and all the other things, the diet is not even there, and they can't compete. And what happens? 7 gold medals won by my current minister now, an Olympic champion in Kirsty Coventry. The question you ask is, frankly speaking, how much have we as Zimbabweans put in those 7 medals? Because she was an urban investor in the USA. But because she carries the flag of Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe has won 7 medals. Frankly, I'm not going to come down to you. But these are questions that Africa must ask itself. We are, and you heard the athletes yesterday, we are quick to say she holds a Namibian passport. We get the flag of Namibia, but how much has Namibia put in this athlete to be on the podium? We must ask ourselves questions. We have to ask ourselves questions. Now, how do we commercialize sport and transform it into a self-funding industry that does not over-rely on government subventions? I find this very interesting. I'm telling you, I'm the CEO of the region, right? And when we're in meetings right now, we will be in the meetings in Lesotho, 8 and 10 of November. My friend Mia knows that there will be spears and all that over my neck. But I'm used to it. I've grown a very thick skin now. I used to get very annoyed about it. No, but the region must commercialize. We need to do. And then you look back and say, but this person who is saying this, his staff has not been paid for the last 3 months. They are saying they can't send athletes because government is not giving them money. But they want me to perform miracles from somewhere. I'm not saying I shouldn't, but I should. But all of us need to ensure that we commit. Because if Region 5 is not a hanging entity out there, it's the 10 member countries. So sport, if it's not happening in Namibia, you're killing Region 5. If it's not happening in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, in South Africa, you're killing Region 5. So there is no comparative advantage, and there is no value that can go out there to anybody, any broadcaster or any other partner who wants to invest if sport is not happening in Namibia. So we have a role to play in ensuring that the region advances. Sometimes we forget that. So I'm saying we need to start driving those elements and really move. I say to my colleagues all the time we meet, if we want to remain reliant and over-reliant on government funding, let's go and look for a piece of land somewhere where we are going to have a cemetery to bury sport, because it's going to die very soon. It's time now we must utilize the value that sport has and create the value that comes out of it. And I mentioned those value chain pillars. How do we make sport relevant in the geopolitical and socio-economic spheres of national agendas? By going beyond the rhetoric of creating hope for the future of our young people. But then we need to move from creating hope to creating a regulated formal and informal sports business sector. Creating a sports-related jobs, creating vibrant sports industries, and owning the sporting means of production. And what are the means of production? It is the raw materials, it is the facilities, it's the machinery, it's the tools used in the production of sports goods and services. Do we understand the raw materials we have? We are very quick to say, you see, we have 5 players who are playing in the English Premier League. Africa must be ashamed of saying that. I'm sorry to say it. We are exporting jobs by exporting our athletes there, because there should have been somebody, a physiotherapist, a masseur, a chiropractor, somebody here in Namibia who was supposed to be working this athlete. But we have exported these jobs by taking these athletes to Europe, and we have given jobs to Europe. Are you with me? But we are very quick to do that. Why don't we fix the things that are making our young people drown by trying to cross the oceans to go across? There are things that we must fix here, rather than waiting to go and enjoy them from somewhere. Let's fix them here in our own home. I mean, you can't look through the window and see that somebody's yard is better than yours, and you'd rather get your children across to live there instead of fixing your own home. It is an undisputed reality that one cannot be a member of the Doctors Association if they are not a doctor. You can't be in the Lawyers Association if you are not a lawyer. Even in the Secretaries Association, I mean, my PA is a member of the Secretaries Association. I'm not. I can't sit. I'm not qualified to sit in there. I can't get there and say, I'm the CEO. I can't. I'm not qualified. It's only in sport where everybody's an expert. A carpenter. Well, I'm not saying anything about the other professions. Get me right. But anybody, a builder, a carpenter, a soldier, everybody who come there, they're experts in sport. I was saying, when I was doing my 4th degree, that meant like 12 years of studying. And then a minister came in, was appointed, used to be elsewhere, I won't mention where, nowhere near sport. I'm not saying I'm a reservoir of knowledge, but I'm saying I must probably say I'm an expert in sport. But this minister comes in the first month, second month, he's asking, so how does it work out? At the 3rd month, he's now an expert. He's not telling, no, you don't do that, you do that. I said, wait a minute. I mean, it's like you in the surgery, you are lying there and the doctors are getting you ready for theater. Say, hey, no, reduce that thing. I've had the privilege, I'm saying privilege, of being in the theater. We have 3 children, my wife and I. And I've been in the theater room 3 times. It's not a very nice place, that one. And I'm imagining myself telling the doctors now, your knives cut from that end to the... By the way, I didn't stay long, Was doctor said, "Oh, you want to be here?" And 3 times I've had to say, "You know what? Allow me, let me." Was now I'm in this heavy plastic thing, and I'm on this mask and these shoes, and I'm standing there, I'm seeing what's happening. I said, "No, this is not my area." But we have got experts that we talked about here, who decide how sport must run in this industry. That's why this industry is always a challenge, and we need to professionalize it. We cannot commercialize it fully without professionalizing the industry and regulating it. There has to be regulation of the player agents, the administrators, and the managers, and there must be some regulation of some sort. And we have to start working around those areas, so that there is issues of ethical conduct, monitoring and evaluation, and ensuring that the risks are managed, and we present the best foot forward to any partners who want to come into the industry. So like I'm saying, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's the only industry that a non-qualified and non-competent facade of opportunists masquerading as sports administrators assume leadership, and in the process causing a myriad of mishaps and capital collateral damage, but still walk away scot-free with titles. It's in sport. The mistakes of the doctors are in the cemetery. The mistakes of the lawyers are in the prisons. Where are the mistakes of the administrators in sport? They are out there, they are paupers. They are paupers. And we have killed the hope in the nation and the generation. Colleagues, if you're one of those sitting here in this conference, give us space. Namibia needs to consider and develop appropriate strategies and processes to regulate player agents, athletes, managers, introduce minimum eligibility qualifications for office bearers in sports industry, merge structures to maximize effective use of limited resources. Merge the structures. These silos that we have around, they become chiefdoms for us, power bases for us. I'm the Olympic Committee President, I'm the Sports Commission Chairperson, I'm the Director of Sport. And I must say this, and I know I'm on camera, I'm very disappointed that I don't see the Directorate of Sport sitting in this room. But the issues we're talking about, they need policy shifts. And I don't see them here. As the Secretary General of the region, I get concerned, Mr. Muyo. I get concerned. And I'm going to say it to the minister as well. I need you to pass that information if I don't see the minister, because I'm leaving in the morning tomorrow. But I'm very disappointed. I would like, and I would have loved the Directorate of Sport to be here to listen to what the athletes are saying and to listen to what these experts are saying to change sport in Namibia. Because they are the policymakers. Muiwa must implement. Muiwa must implement the policy as defined by the policymakers, and not the other way around. So I'm saying when we have got structures and silos all over, the same limited resources that we have, we fragment it. I spent the better part of my life in the Olympic movement, and I can tell you that out of the 19 world programs that we have, Namibia should be somewhere right now. There is funding for the research projects that she's talking about. Professor Shones is sitting in Pretoria. He is the research hub for IOC. And we have the resource right here in our region. There is funding up to 80,000 USD, Continental and Regional Sports Support Grant. You just left Morocco from the African Games now. There should have been funding that was there to prepare Team Namibia through Olympic Solidarity. There is funding for coaching scholarships programs, athlete scholarship programs. There is funding for legacy projects. There is funding for research, women in sport. There is funding for sport for all out there, which we need to tap. You see, you have to make the step to tap. You have to work for you to tap the resources. They don't just come to you. And I'm saying we need to ensure that structures maximize the effective use of limited resources. We need to create business opportunities for the youth in Namibia and to trade to mediocrity for meritocracy, for sustainable growth and dynamic commercialization of sport as a business. Mediocrity, no. My friend knows that I had said I'm not going to present. I don't trade on mediocrity. I don't like that. I like being ready for something. That's my nature, and sometimes it's not a very likable character. There is a great potential for downstream business to be stimulated through sport in this expo. And the conference also should serve as a confluence of industry and commerce, a platform for sport to showcase its undisputed value to beneficiate goods and services produced by women and the youths of Namibia in order to explore both domestic and global markets. My friend is going to be talking about facilities and management of those facilities. Some of you were in Angola and we were there at the games, and you saw how November 11 Stadium has been turned into a hub of business and commerce. Not waiting for a league match that comes. Perhaps the whole season there's nothing happening, the chairs and so on, they start gathering moth and all that. We need to start looking into maximizing that, our facilities and industries, and create sports opportunities as such, a hub of opportunities. Sport as a business requires all major players to commit to contribute towards its transformation. Broadcasters, corporate captains of industry and commerce, civic society, sports delivery agencies and government all need to be sincere in using sport to become a vector, and that catapults the sports industry into a booming industry in Namibia. Sport should be effectively used to change the face of society, particularly by transforming the lives of the 177 million people in our region through commercialization. And as the AUC Region 5, we provide a synergetic window to propel the Namibia Annual Sports Exposition to dizzier heights by galvanizing the entire region to participate in future expos. That's what we want to do. We want Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, Mozambique, South Africa to be here at the expo, in future expos, so that we create that value chain and ensure that there's synergy in running through that. And furthermore, the programs that are provided by the region, among them being the Podium Performance Program, we have the Region 5 Games, we have the Women Leadership Program, we have the Regional Marathon, we have the Regional Museum, we have the Regional Annual Sports Awards, among others. They are ready products upon which Namibia can piggyback and utilize in its commercialization. I must pause here. We again transmit this message to the ministry. Just wait, hang on. Step me back again there. We cannot send people to regional meetings and conferences and workshops. We spend the money that we say we don't have for them to come to these workshops and come back here and business is as usual. Rather, don't send them. In March, we were in South Africa for a 4-day session women leadership program. And I'll be very blunt and say Namibia sent a lady to that conference. We agreed that by July, they should have submitted the proposals for, we are providing a grant there, 25,000 Rand for Namibia to run the women leadership program. As I speak to you now, not even a report, not even communication, not even response to the emails that we have written to the person. That must stop. Because we number one, there is space that was taken that somebody else could have utilized, and it was blocked, and somebody came to that workshop, they come in, nothing happened. Now, listen to that. We have international partners that we are running this program with. There's a board meeting on the 14th of November. And now we must report to the partners progress in the region. Can you see how we look laughable as an example? And we expect partners to come and be with us and work with us when we can't deliver the promises that we have. So I'm just saying that in the selection of the people that attend these regional programs and meetings and so on, let's ensure that we take people to account. Let's put them to account. Whether it's these national federations that come dancing, you were in Gaborone, yeah? I'm hoping Miwa has received your report and resolutions from that conference that need to be done. Because he must know as your boss. And your constituents must know. And that is the danger we have of people who go, I'm not saying that's you, who go to conferences, they come back, they sit with the information. They wait for another conference. Or they are busy surfing the net to see where is the next conference. People are coming to meetings, they go shopping when everybody else is in the meeting. Namibia has no money, they struggle, they get this person on the plane to go and attend, because us as a region, if you don't attend, there's a penalty fee. So now people are attending because they're afraid of a penalty. But when they get there, they go shopping. Colleagues, we need to change. I mentioned that I may not be allowed in this country again. But that's how we must improve our sport, isn't it? We have to improve our sport. So when we have programs like these, when we have got meetings, conferences, forums that we have, let's come back and report to our constituencies and implement what has been agreed. That's how the region is going to run. I was in Morocco and I'm watching Frankie, long jump, the gold medal that was won in Morocco on Thursday. Long jump, 7.65 meters. And I'm saying to myself, that's Africa. It means we're not even going to be in the top 16. We are sending this person, boys, was a qualifying event, won a gold medal. So we're sending an athlete next year to Tokyo. Because you know for a fact that bronze medal is not going to be anything less than 8.20. You know that's a fact when you get there. 2008, Ngonzashe Makusha from Zimbabwe jumped, he had a season's best of 8.30. He jumped 8.19 and he missed the medal by a centimeter. Because that's how that's the game is. There's an athlete who was there, high jump, jumping 1.75. He gets there, warm up. The guy is doing warm up and say, no, put the 2 meters for warm up. The guy is already shaking. So I'm just saying that we need to have concerted implementation of these programs, colleagues. And you as federations, if you're sitting in here, you have a responsibility. Don't pass the buck. You have a responsibility to ensure that the athletes receive appropriate training and preparation. And I like it when you then argue and say, government is releasing money very late. We're not getting the money. But that is your business. That is your business. When you were elected, you were saying, I'm going to change this sport. When we take you to task, but I'm only a volunteer. You are not only a volunteer, you're an administrator. We need you to change the sport. Play your role. And it's important that each one of us must know the role that we play. From school sports, national federations, sports commissions, Olympic committees, we must all know what we are doing. And in this region, that is the biggest handicap we have of these silos that are fragmented. And we need to mend the bridges and reduce the gaps that we have. My challenge to you is not to be complacent, but to do everything possible to grow this expo in leaps and bounds over the next coming years. And remember, as Region 5, we don't follow standards. We set them. So we need this expo to rise and set a trailblazer that begins to stimulate business around that. Our vision as a region is we are a leading sport region through innovation and excellence. And when we define leading, we say we don't settle for second best. And by leading, we mean we get noticed both on and off the field. So let Namibia get noticed. We need the whole world to... I don't want us to look at this conference and this expo to be a national expo. It must be an international, a Namibia International Expo, where people from Singapore, from where business must come here and converge here for a whole week of activities. And that journey has started now. It must not stop. And let's ensure that it drives. We'll start it from the regional level to get all the countries coming here, and we grow it into Africa, and we grow it and make it a global expo that converges business and industry here in Namibia for us. As I leave this podium, because I'm not going to go into the PowerPoint that I was going to raise for you, I dare those charged with leading sport in Namibia and under whose stewardship bestows this annual sports expo to please not let this noble idea die an insidious death. Colleagues, let's be very frank. Namibians, we can't come into this conference from outside and we're talking to each other. You have to be here. You have to be here. You have to tell your colleagues, your other federation members, they have to be here. I mean, people have spent time. They've left their CEOs in their organizations. There are big people there, busy offices. They leave that. They come over here and they speak to themselves. And because I'm CEO of Region 5, it means I'm a citizen of Namibia. I'm also a member. I'm speaking from my country's point of view as Namibia, that we need each other to ensure that we challenge each other. What could be so important in these 2 days that we can't be here? and benefit as a nation. It must be a challenge to us. I would like us to deploy all our faculties to ensure perpetual sustainability of this project for posterity to come. And to all you current and future leaders, aspire to inspire before you expire. I thank you.